The fluorescent lights of Ward 4C hummed with a cold, clinical indifference that mirrored the silence in my heart. 2 weeks ago, my husband, Mark, had held my hand. Today, he was a ghost, having walked out the moment the doctor confirmed my chronic condition would require long-term care. "I didn't sign up for this, Sarah," he'd said, his voice as hollow as his promises. Abandoned in a sterile room, I felt less like a patient and more like a discarded piece of inventory. My world had narrowed down to the rhythmic beep-beep of a heart monitor and the crushing weight of betrayal. I spent my days staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how my story ended, alone, forgotten, and broken. Then came the rustle of sheets from the bed beside mine. A man, weathered by time, but with eyes that held an unsettling amount of calm, shifted his position. He noticed my trembling hands and, instead of looking away, he offered a small, knowing nod. In that suffocating atmosphere, his presence felt like a lifeline I hadn't realized I was drowning for. Little did I know, this stranger wasn't just a neighbor in the ward, he was the anchor that would eventually pull me back from the edge of my own wreckage. Days dragged on, marked only by the sterile smell of antiseptic and the deepening gloom of my isolation. My neighbor, whose name was Elias, had been admitted for a grueling surgery, yet his spirit remained remarkably unshaken. One particularly harrowing afternoon, after a nurse left with a grim update about my recovery timeline, I let out a jagged, humorless laugh. "At this rate," I croaked, staring at the ceiling, "if we both make it out of here, we might as well just get married. We are already trapped in this purgatory together." I expected a polite chuckle, or a dismissive shrug. Instead, the room went quiet. Elias turned his head slowly, his gaze heavy and deliberate. He didn't offer the trite, pitying smile I'd grown to loathe from the staff. His expression was solemn, almost reverent. "I've spent years looking for a reason to start over," he said, his voice low but unshakable. "If you're serious, Sarah, I'm listening." My breath hitched. The air in the ward seemed to shift, the cold clinical atmosphere suddenly charged with an electric, terrifying possibility. What started as a bitter, throwaway joke had suddenly transformed into an unexpected lifeline, bridging the gap between my past wreckage and a future I had stopped believing in entirely. Discharge day arrived like a cold slap of reality. The hospital, for all its misery, had been a controlled environment, a cocoon where the world couldn't reach us. Once those automatic doors slid open, the weight of my reality crashed back in, the empty house, the mounting medical bills, and the echoing silence of Mark's abandonment. I felt exposed, fragile, and utterly directionless. But Elias didn't just fade away into the city's grey sprawl. He was there, waiting in the parking lot with a cane in one hand and a thermos in the other. He hadn't forgotten our joke. Over the next few months, he became a constant, silent force in my rehabilitation. He'd show up with physical therapy exercises, homemade soups, and the kind of steady patience that made my anxiety quiet down. While I struggled to piece together a life I didn't recognize, he was the glue. However, the shadow of my past wasn't finished with me. Just as I started feeling like myself again, Mark reappeared, sensing my newfound stability, and wanting back in. He claimed he had made a mistake. Seeing the two men, one who had fled at my lowest, and one who had chosen to stay, standing in my living room, the choice became blindingly clear. The joke had become a genuine, terrifying, and beautiful commitment. The tension in the living room was suffocating. Mark, groomed and desperate, paced the floor like a caged animal, spewing apologies that felt as cheap as they were rehearsed. Elias stood by the window, his posture unyielding, a stark contrast to my ex-husband's chaotic energy. "You're just a rebound, Sarah," Mark spat, turning his venom toward Elias. "He doesn't even know you. He's just a lonely old man looking for a nurse." I was about to lash out when Elias finally moved. He walked toward the desk, pulling out a faded, weathered photograph from his wallet, not of me, but of a woman who looked strikingly like me, from years ago. My blood ran cold. "I wasn't in that hospital by accident, Sarah," Elias said, his voice trembling for the first time. "Years ago, I lost someone because I wasn't strong enough to stay by their side during their darkest hour. I lived with that cowardice every day. When I saw you in that ward, abandoned, just like she was, I knew fate had given me a second chance." The joke about marriage. That was the first time I felt like I was actually redeeming my own soul. The silence that followed was deafening. The revelation wasn't a betrayal, it was a profound, heartbreaking confession of love and redemption. Mark's exit was as cowardly as his return. He vanished the moment the truth settled in the room, realizing he had no place in a narrative built on genuine sacrifice. Left with Elias, the air finally cleared. We weren't just two broken people clinging to a hospital promise, we were two survivors who had chosen to rebuild, not out of convenience, but out of a shared, hard-earned strength. That day, the joke evolved into our foundation. I learned that loyalty isn't found in the sunshine of easy days, but in the dark, quiet corners of a hospital ward where a person chooses to stay when they have every reason to run. Our lives didn't become perfect, but for the first time in years, they were honest. In Justice Valley, we see stories like mine every single day, tales of betrayal, yes, but also of the unexpected grace that follows. True character isn't defined by who you are when life is flourishing, but by who you remain when everything is falling apart. If you've ever found light in the most unlikely of places, or if you've had to rewrite your own ending after being discarded by someone who swore they'd stay, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the most important lesson you've learned about loyalty? Don't forget to like and subscribe to Justice Valley for more deep dives into the human condition. Until next time, stay vigilant.